The year you referenced was a tough year. After we traded Shaquille, and I think Lamar and Kobe both got injured, and Rudy moved on in midseason. I think that was a tough year for the franchise. And we didn't make the playoffs. And we got a good draft choice, but we didn't make the playoffs. That was a trying year.
Do you see any parallels between that period and what's going on now?
A similar, kind of environment. I mean, like I mentioned, it was, a stressful year for our fans. And, I don't think they questioned our direction. But we have, passionate, loyal fans, and they don't want to see us lose, and we don't want to lose for them. And the games come so quickly, back to back, 4 games in 1 week, and it's tough, to work your way through an 82-game schedule.
That rebuilding period, do you envision it possibly taking that long in this current state, as far as just being able to get back to championship level?
I would be happy if it took the same amount of time, yeah. Now, I think that year we didn't make the playoffs, and I think the next 2 years we did make the playoffs and we got beat in the first round, and then I think the next year we did make it to the finals, so that would be great. I think we can do better, and it may not turn out that good like it did then, okay? But I think as long as we, show progress, improvement, good decisions, I think our fans and partners, are on board.
When you look at that timeline and the fact that most likely scenario you have Kobe for 2 more years, do you feel pressure to condense that timeline or to credit for Kobe? Because he's talked about it so much.
Yeah, we want the same thing. And everybody in this room knows Kobe, and he's not, I've already used the word patience, I think once or twice. If he's in Europe watching this, I'm sure he's saying, why is Mitch using the word patience? He's not the most patient person in the world. Okay, and that's never going to change. And because of that, we've been to the finals a bunch of times, and we've won 5 championships, because of the package that he brings to this franchise. So it's hard to criticize him. So we want the same thing. We both want to win, as much and as soon as possible. But once again, it takes an organization a long time to get in the position that we're in, where we have options financially going forward for the next year or 2 or 3, and you just have to make wise decisions using, that space. If you don't make a wise decision, then you can set yourself back 6 or 7 years, and we don't want to do that.
When you look at your flexibility, when you look at the landscape, when you consider the draw of Los Angeles and the organization, do you believe you can build a championship team in 2 summers?
Yeah, I don't want to, put a number on the number of summers, but I believe we can. I believe this is an attractive destination. The legacy that Dr. Buss created with this franchise since he bought it, in 1979. I think if you look in this building, there might have been 1 banner when he bought the team, and now there's certainly, a whole lot more. And I think that goes a long way when you're, out there recruiting players, and I think that's a big advantage we have. Certainly our fan base in the city of Los Angeles, that's a big plus as well.
Any thoughts on Nash and his injury woes and how you see him going forward?
When we signed Steve, nobody anticipated his second game that he'd break his leg. And, not unexpectedly because he is an older player, but, when that does happen later in your career, kind of like one thing leads to another. And a lot of times it doesn't. But in his case, it did. And nobody's, worked harder and has been more frustrated than he's been. Having said that, he does want to play next year. Certainly from an organizational point of view, it's hard to say, well, under the point guard position, we can bank on this guy. So we can't do that. We're going to have to make sure that position's covered. And I know Steve's going to be in here every day. He'll be in Vancouver working with his trainer. He'll be in this gym working with our people. And we'll know more and more as the season and the summer goes on. But certainly we can't sit here and say, well, let's just get it back up for Steve Nash and we should be fine. We're going to have to cover that position.
Do you have to get a starting caliber point guard this offseason?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the draft holds. And, we'll see the value of the pick. And we'll see who's available in free agency. We have a nice young ball handling guard who had an opportunity to play. And I thought from time to time really showed that he can play in this league. And he's not quite 23 years old. Is he ready to lead a team, through the playoffs? That remains to be seen. I wouldn't bet on that right now, but we are optimistic on Kendall Marshall going forward.
How much you said after
You
the,
mentioned earlier about flexibility and salary cap space. You had a couple chances to get under the luxury tax this year in trades. Knowing now, which
Did we, or are you saying we did?
Yeah, you probably did.
We probably did. Okay.
Would you have done things differently with that? Would you have done things differently with the tax, knowing how things turned out?
No, we've this organization, rarely, if ever, has made a strategic decision just to save money. I'm not exactly sure. There's so much going on, so much rumor up to the trade deadline. I'm not exactly sure what deal you feel we could have done, but there was a lot of activity. And, the bottom line is we didn't feel making a financial deal and not getting an asset back, was the right message to send or the best thing to do for this organization. And that's why we didn't do it.
Can you infer from that the luxury tax issues are not that important to the Lakers going forward?
Well, it's always going to be important, but we will not, that won't prevent us, from, fielding a team that we feel can contend for a championship. Now, we're certainly not in the situation we were 2 or 3 years ago, when we were kind of locked into, being, $20 to $30 million into the tax. And, in fact, if that was the case today, because of the punitive nature of the graduated scale, it might cost the team, an extra 90 to 100 million. So I think at that point, if we were in that situation, we'd have to make sure that the players we have on the team, bring to the organization what we hope they bring. But we're not in that situation right now. Although we will pay a tax this year. I'm not sure if many people know that. We will pay a tax this year.
Mitch, you mentioned back in February that you thought this draft probably had 10 guys that really liked it. It seems like most everybody is coming out. Is there something that you want to address other than just getting the best potential long-term talent as opposed to any kind of...
Yeah, Mike, it's too early. We don't know what our pick's going to be. I guess we could assume it'll be where it is now. Look at the board and make some assumptions. But to be honest with you, the evaluation process, really hasn't begun. A lot of the kids that are coming out are freshmen. So we've seen them play this year, but we haven't seen them play for more than this year. We're not allowed to get out and watch the high school kids. We can go to the McDonald's game. So we have a feel for these guys. But really, once the lottery order is determined, then you start working the kids out individually, and we're allowed to bring them in twice. So the process is just beginning, to get to know these kids. You can go on, the internet and look at all the draft, predictions, and you can get a feel. But my guess is it's going to be different, when the draft date rolls around, after everybody gets a chance to work guys out, interview them, Chicago pre-draft, all that stuff.
I think Young said yesterday that it would be a lot easier, that you told him it would be a lot easier if he just opted into his contract in the meeting. How optimistic are you that you could retain him?
We're optimistic, but here we are. It's, once again, I'm going to refer to the marketplace on July 1st. You just don't know, what it's going to be. And we have to, once again, use our space wisely. So I think Nick's had a great year. I know he's from Los Angeles. He likes playing here in Los Angeles. I think that's a benefit to us. But he's got a very savvy representative, and they all do their job. And there will be interest in Nick as a free agent from other teams. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Mitch, you've touched on the high hopes you have for Kendall Marshall. How much do you see Steve Nash's role evolving into being a mentor next season?
Don't know yet. I mean, I know Steve mentioned that, and I think that's a possibility. Steve just wants to play. And I don't know if he's thinking. I mean, last year at this time, we kind of joked about it yesterday. I asked him, what did he think he can do next year, which is this season? And he looked at me and he said 18-8. Okay, and obviously he played a limited number of games, and once again was injured. So next year, I don't know how you predict it. I know he wants to play. He's got complete confidence. I can't imagine in his head that he's thinking he's a 35 to a 38 minute a game kind of a player. Maybe his last year he may look for a different kind of a role, but a lot of that's going to be determined during the summer, but probably most of it will be determined during training camp. How he does, can he make it through 30 days or 28 days of camp, and at that point we'll see how much he wants to play and can play.
Are you going to represent the team at the draft lottery?
Excuse me?
So who's going to represent the team?
Don't know yet. I know there are some internal discussions, going on about that. It's going to be next month, so it's going to have to be decided sooner. But I don't know who that's going to be yet.
Mitch, you touched a little bit on Nick Young and Kendall Marshall, but among the other players that you signed last season with one-year deals, are there any in particular that you see to be a part of the future?
I don't have my board in front of me, and a lot of times, when you start thanking people, you always forget somebody. So I don't want to go down that road right now. But I think, without mentioning the names, we've had some players, younger players that did sign one-year deals that really, some of them over a long period of time, really showed that they belong in this league. And it was helpful for us, even though one or two of them got injured, just to be around them, watch them play, 50, 60 games. And, once again, they're young. And, we learned a lot, and we think that'll help us going forward, when we look to fill out our roster.
To ask you about two guys specifically, Jordan Farmer left, and obviously you guys have history with him.
Right.
He left a lot of money on the table in Turkey.
That's right.
And Nick Young, a hometown guy, left, probably below market value. You would agree with that. Is there any sense of greater obligation to the guys like those two, considering what they sacrificed financially to try to work it out with them moving forward?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's a loyalty factor. At least I've always felt that's the way this organization, operated, and will continue to operate that way. But it's a double. There's two sides to the coin. We've always been good to players, and we look to them for some loyalty also. But the big unknown, which is the marketplace. Sometimes, we would overpay a little bit to get a player, or sometimes the player might take a little bit less to be with us. But the problem becomes is when there are these huge discrepancies, and that we just can't predict right now.